Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and this is the Fiio K19, a $1,300 US flagship from Fiio's line DAC, headphone amp, preamp, and equalizer all in one unit. This was a loan direct from Fiio. I am an affiliate link member with several different retailers who carry this product, so I will put affiliate links to those down in the description below. If you like what I have to say about this product, please consider using one of those affiliate links and I will get a small kickback. Fiio nor any of those other companies has made any attempt to influence my opinion on this piece, so all the thoughts you're about to get are mine and mine alone, and I only use affiliate link money to put back into the channel to keep the channel running and to save up and buy cool gear for review whenever possible as well. Alright, this product is exciting because there is a lot going on with it. It is, again, a DAC and a headphone amp, but what is really interesting about it, and one of the reasons why, and the reasons I should say why I reached out to Fiio to ask if I could review this one, is that it's got extensive digital signal processing, which includes parametric equalization on it. And then it also has a lot of video integration stuff, like HDMI ARC and even an HDMI input, which seems to indicate that it is definitely geared towards people who like to use headphones while watching TV shows and movies and that sort of thing, or even gaming. Okay, so those were some things that really caught my eye and piqued my interest about it, and so I have spent some time with this and I am here ready to report on it. So we will get into the details right after shameless self-promotion.
Hello. I'm one of the reasons that Wave Theory can't spend all of his money on audio gear. He wants you to know that your support is vital for keeping the channel running. So if you enjoy Wave Theory's bussin' review riz and no-cap review style and want to encourage him to stay in the basement so I don't have to listen to his dad jokes as much, like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can also send him a donation on PayPal or sign up for the Patreon. Links are in the description. Now on to the review.
This is another one of those where you should go get your favorite beverage and get comfortable, because there are a lot of different functionality on this unit, and so we are going to be here for a while. Use the timestamps to move around and watch the parts that are of most interest to you. The bottom line for me on this product is that it is a mixed bag. The feature set and the implementation of the feature set are all really solid. The feature set, I think, is excellent. The execution of the features, I think, is also strong. It is in the sound where it's more of a mixed bag for me, and I think that is mostly because of the choice of using a THX amp. The sound from the DAC seems very competent, very detailed, mostly neutral, and a price appropriate for a unit of this type at this price. The amplifier kicks out a lot of power. It has plenty of drive to it, but it has a tonal quality that I attribute to my ears is just kind of what affects a lot of THX amplifiers out there, that just gives it kind of a glary sound to it. Now, there are some headphones for which that works well and is not a big deal, and then there are a lot more headphones for which that glare can be grating and fatiguing. And so I'm going to talk about all of that, as well as get into like the home theater integration stuff and the equalization stuff and so forth here throughout the video, and unpack all of those things that I just said. All right. Starting with the story of how this unit came to be in my possession, and then we'll get into specs. So a thing that I don't talk about a lot on this channel is because like most of my reviewing efforts have gone into headphone-based listening, is that I do have a full 7.1 channel home theater system in the family room of my house. I use it individually, but also my family uses it a lot. We watch a lot of shows and movies together with the big screen and the surround sound and all of that, and enjoy it quite a bit. Well, there have been some instances where I or my significant other, like, we want to watch a show and the kids are in bed or something like that, and the kids have started to complain about loud shows keeping them awake. And I'm like, well, at least for when I'm watching by myself, I have all of these nice headphones around. It would be nice to find a simple, easy way to integrate headphone listening into that experience so I can sit on my comfy couch in front of my nice big TV and watch shows just using good headphones there. And so when this unit came along, with its HDMI ARC input and HDMI pass-through, which I'll say more about in a moment, it got my attention. I was like, oh, that might be a really easy way to integrate into home theater use. And also just that it's a small-ish, compact, all-in-one unit. Like, it won't take up a whole lot of extra rack space. I'll only have one extra thing to plug in for power rather than like at least two and so forth. So it had a lot going for it in that area. And then if you've watched my channel at all, you know that I complain about shoutiness and honkiness in the mid-range of a lot of headphones. I'm just very sensitive to tonal imbalances. And if you don't like the term sensitive, I'm very intolerant of tonal imbalances in the mid-range. And that's true of music listening. But what's even more difficult for me is spoken word or dialogue. With so many headphones that I even love for music, the Susvara, the Utopia, the HE1000 SE, just as examples, spoken dialogue on those things just still sounds boxy and hollow to me on those things. Singing and music is usually just fine on those with the right source gear, but spoken word just can't really do it. So that is one area where the equalization features in here also got my attention, because it's like, oh hey, maybe I could make the dialogue sound more natural for movie and TV watching. So I reached out to Fiio and asked if they would send me one of these units. They were pretty excited that I did, and they sent one along. I am not sure if it has to go back. I'm assuming that it will, but we'll find out. Okay. So that's how it came to be in my possession, and I did check it for movie and TV watching, so I will comment on those in a little bit. Now, I will give you the highlights of a very long list of specs and features. So let's get into it. So again, $1,300 US. For those $1,300, what do you get? The digital to analog conversion is done by two ESS ES9039S Pro DAC chips. The equalization on board, there is a 31-band parametric EQ controlled by an ADI ADSP21565 chip with a Shark Plus core. I don't know what all of that means. I'm just reading to you what's on the website there. The DAC can decode PCM signals up to 32-bit 768 kilohertz sampling rates, DSD up to DSD 512. It is a full MQA decoder, and the USB controller on it is an XMOS XU316. It will not decode or downmix multi-channel audio, though, if you are thinking about integrating this into a home theater system in the way I did. I will say more about that in a moment. The amplifier is built around THX AAA 788 Plus circuits, and I believe there are 4 of those little amp circuits in there, 2 per channel, wired up, 2 in series with each other, I believe, and then the 2 pairs in parallel with each other, so that we can have a maximum of 8 watts per channel at 32 ohms of output power. So it has quite a bit of power to it. The choice of THX amp I do understand, because you can get a lot of power output with fairly low heat output in a small package. And so I think that is in large measure why that is in here. And so that makes sense from that standpoint. That's what's in there, but plenty of power. And yeah, I will say that it doesn't get particularly hot. And so that's a nice feature in there as well. But that's just a starter list of everything that this can do. So what we're gonna do next is we're going to take a unit tour of this unit. I'm gonna have a video clip for you where I show you the front panel, some of the menu settings, and then the back panel. And as we go through all of that, I will comment on like some of the usefulness of the features or any quirks that I notice along the way. So let's go ahead and cut to that. All right, combo, unit tour, and features analysis, all that. So this is the front panel, and it's pretty straightforward and simple. You get Menu and input selection button and knob. You get power on, off, and volume button and knob up here on top. We have a USB-C input here on the front. This is where you would connect a USB-C cable to a computer, all that to do firmware updates or those sorts of things. It also is a USB audio input. There is another USB audio input on the back. If you plug this one in and use it, it will mute the one on the back. 3 headphone outputs here. We have 4.4 millimeter Pentacon balanced, we have 4-pin XLR balanced, and then we have 6.35 millimeter or 1/4 inch single-ended output there. Using the 1/4 inch output does have the output power of the headphone amp though, so really you need to use these two inputs if at all, or outputs, excuse me, if at all possible. There is a small display screen right here, and I will plug the unit in and power it on here in just a moment to show it to you. The screen will auto-rotate because I have it on its feet to stand vertically now, but you can also orient the unit horizontally. When it is vertical, you get a taller sound stage. When it is horizontal, you get a wider sound stage. Those were jokes, okay? The orientation does not affect the soundstage, but I wonder how many hours it's going to take a humorless ASR troll to head over to the ASR forum and say that I was, in all seriousness, talking about rotating this in the soundstage size. I set the over-under at 2. Anyway, 2 hours, that is. All right, so those were jokes, but this display screen and the orientation here is much like a smartphone or a tablet. This screen will orient, it will turn to match the orientation of vertical or horizontal. But it is a small screen which can make menu navigation a little bit interesting. Let me plug it in and power it on and I will show you. All right, it is plugged in, so using the remote control, I will tell it to power on, and it goes through this boot cycle. You have different colored LEDs behind these knobs here. These will glow different colors corresponding to sampling rate or whether you have DSD files, if you are decoding something from one of the digital, the wired inputs. If you use Bluetooth, there's a different color scheme for whatever Bluetooth codec you are using here as well. You have the option of turning those lights off. If you don't like them, you find them distracting, there's a button on the remote that will do that. I will show you the remote control here in a moment. But look at this display screen and like how tiny it is. Like, here's just my thumb. I don't have particularly large hands, but just to show you like the size of this screen right here, it is quite tiny. All right, and in fact, like here is the volume level indicator right there. It actually goes up to 120, I believe, but like it's just super tiny. And then we have also super tiny indicators up here for like which outputs are you using. Are you using the powered output for the headphone? Are you using the preamp output? It will tell you right here. There is like a, what is that? UH. Okay, oh, that's the gain stage. I gotta tell you, the gain stage is all there. UH stands for ultra high. What does that mean? I'll show you in a moment. Okay, and then there is information on here. We have the coaxial input selected. There was the last sampling rate used. Here was the equalization setting that I'm on. But you see how big all of that text is not? Okay, like don't even try to read all of that from across a room. You might see it on a desktop, but if you use this in your equipment rack in a home theater or whatever, and then you come back and you sit in your couch, no way you're seeing all of that. That's just something to keep in mind. All right. Here's the remote control. It is a fairly straightforward and simple remote control. It is fine. It provides direct access to all of the inputs. Here's the light on off thing for those indicator lights right there. Okay, 2 programmable function buttons, then mute here in the middle, volume up down here, and then scroll through the equalization presets and custom settings right here, power on, off, and then also output select. You can cycle from headphone output to pre-output or both, okay, using that button right there. Okay, no menu navigation on the remote control. I don't know of a way you can access the menu that you get to here from the front panel. And also, like normally where you would think menu navigation buttons are not menu navigation. It's equalization, change, volume up, down, mute, on, off. Okay. To get to the menu, you've got to come to the one here button that says menu input right here. You push it in, and you get to the menu. Now, I would think that turning this clockwise would mean navigate downward, but no, you got to turn it counterclockwise to navigate downward. Okay, select the thing that you want, and then it will go there. So let me show you the gain settings, because that's something right there. So hit gain. You have 5 gain settings on this for reasons. I don't know all the reasons. Low, medium, high, super high, ultra high. If you're using hard to drive, full-size headphones, ultra high is pretty good. If you're using sensitive IEMs, I'd look into low. I used ultra high a lot because I was using full-size headphones, and found movie and TV volume to be a little bit on the quiet side, and so the ultra gain helped get those loud enough, actually. More on that in a moment. But all kinds of other options in here, and again, just the weird, I would have wanted to go downward turning this clockwise, but again, it's counterclockwise, right? All kinds of different options that I won't go through all of them, but to get out of this, you actually have to navigate to the get out of menu, okay, to go back there. So that's a little bit of a quirk to keep in mind in terms of operating the unit, is that you have to do the menu from the front panel, not from the remote. A little bit odd. All right, let me turn the unit around and show you the back panel. All right, we'll work our way from the bottom up here on the back panel. Master power switch, power input, power input. Wait, what's going on here? There is an onboard AC power supply that you can connect just using a standard power cord here. But then there's also a DC power input labeled 15 volt 3 amp, and then a switch right here to switch between the AC power or the DC power. So if you want to use this power supply, flip that switch over to AC. If you have a really nice LPS that can do 15 volt and 3 amp that you want to use and potentially upgrade the sound quality on this thing, then flip that over, and then by all means use the DC power input there. I did my testing just using the internal power supply. Then we have the preamp or DAC outputs here, balanced 3-pin XLR, and then you get 2 pair of RCA output of the same. Then you have a bunch of SPDIF connections. You've got 1 each of optical, Toslink, and coaxial RCA input and matching outputs. They are pass-throughs as far as I know on those. We have DC or trigger in out, 12 volt trigger, power trigger in out on here as well. Here's a ground lift button if you want it. 2 USB C connectors here. The bottom one is a USB-C audio connection. So if you wanted to connect to the USB port of a computer or a streamer or something like that to do music or whatever, that's right there. This one right here is labeled RS-232. And that's the port that you would use to connect to your computer to download and then access all of the equalization options. So to get to the DSP application, you've got to download something from the Fiio website. I'll put a link down in the description, and then connect to the computer via that USB input. Now, that approach might be a little bit inconvenient. If your primary audio source is already USB, and then you also need to do this one, you'll need to either 2 USB connections to your computer. I am not sure if that is possible, okay? But anyway, like to be able to play music and listen at the same time, you'll need to make sure that you can accommodate 2 USB connections. When I did my messing around with the EQ here, I used the coax input so I could hear what I was doing as I was adjusting the equalization. And I will talk more about the results of the equalization in the sound section. But again, just know that to access the EQ, you've got to download an application and then talk to the unit via USB right here. 2 HDMI ports, an input and an output, and then the output can also double as the ARC or audio return channel input. These are not I2S connections. These are really more for like just integrating on the video side. So if you have a television that has an HDMI audio return channel on it, which most of them do anymore, you can connect that to your TV and get whatever audio is playing on your TV input right there. This right here is a standard HDMI input. This is pretty cool because what you can do is you can put this unit in between your HDMI source, like a Blu-ray player or a Roku streaming box or your gaming console, okay, anything like that, HDMI input to here, and then to your TV here, and then this will intercept the audio and output the video to your TV, okay? Pretty cool, pretty slick on there. Now, of note, neither of these two inputs, and nor will the SPDIF if it's relevant to you, none of them will accept a multi-channel bitstream connection. What does that mean? In home theater systems for surround sound, if you want to use Dolby Digital or like Dolby Digital Plus or Dolby Atmos, or if you want to use any DTS codec or anything like that, surround sound, those are carried by what they call a bitstream digital connection. This unit can only accept PCM signals or DSD via, actually DSD is going to be limited to USB, so don't worry on that one. But this can only accept PCM signals via the HDMI inputs or these, and 2-channel PCM at that, not even multi-channel PCM. I noticed this because, again, I got this unit, or I asked for this unit because I wanted to try to integrate it into my home theater system. And so I connected it via HDMI ARC to my TV and didn't get sound. And that alarmed me a little bit. But then my TV is old. It's like a 2012 Panasonic Plasma, right? So I thought maybe that just wasn't working. So then I went to my surround receiver and I used one of its 2 HDMI outputs to go into here and still didn't get any sound. And that worried me for a little bit. And then I started reading the manual and I realized that, oh, because my home theater system is a full 7.1 channel setup, I have everything set to output bitstream so that I can do all the Dolby codecs, except for Atmos. My receiver doesn't do Atmos, but it does Dolby True HD, Dolby Digital Plus, all that. It does DTS, HD master audio, and that sort of thing. And it was set up to do those things because it's a 7.1 channel home theater setup, right? So what I ended up having to do was go into my AVR's menu and change the audio output settings of the HDMI outputs to like from none. In other words, the receiver handles all the sound and powers the speakers, okay? And then send that audio to the TV. Once I did that, I was able to use HDMI ARC just fine and no problems there. So one thing that I would like to see done in the future, just to make home theater integration for someone like me a little bit easier, is to at least for these units to be able to accept a multi-channel bitstream input and then down mix it to 2-channel audio. That would be the next step on this integration. This one doesn't do it yet. It's just anytime I wanted to use it, I had to go change a setting in my AVR's menu and then remember to change it back when I was done so that the speakers would work the next time, because I don't think my family knows how to do that. I'm the one that would have to do that. So I just have to remember to make sure I change it back every time. But that is something to keep note of if you're going to get a unit and try to, one of these units and try to integrate it into a multi-channel home theater system. All right, but otherwise the build is solid. This is what the top panel looks like. This is what the underneath looks like. There are sticky rubber feet that come in the box so you can prop this up off of a desk just a little bit. And there is one more piece that I have not shown you yet. And that is this simple little plastic piece like this, that when you're in the vertical orientation, you put it on top of the unit like so. I'll make sure you can see that a little bit better. And then you take a headphone and you stick it on here and boom, headphone stand. And what's nice is that the unit does not really ever get particularly hot. It just gets mildly warm. So there's no danger to your headphones if they rest on there. There's no danger to the unit if they rest on there. And the worst that happens is that when you take these off and put them on your head, it feels just a little bit warm on the side of your head. No big deal. Okay, I thought just this simple little plastic piece with the vertical orientation here was a nice little inclusion. All right, now, and again, I will stress you can lay this flat if you live in a house with small children. You know, you might get this thing to tip over. It is fairly stable. If you have cats, probably just go horizontal. All right, but that is the unit tour and a talk about some of the features and using them. So let's go ahead and cut to me back on camera talking about other things. So that is among the more robust feature sets you're really going to find for a headphone-based like kind of unit. And really what I kind of think Fiio is going for here is essentially like a desktop theater kind of thing. For a lot of people. Like there is a remote control, so you are not tethered to using it on a desk that way, but it just seems like with the inclusion of an HDMI pass-through or an HDMI ARC and all of those sorts of things, like they are just really going after the section of the market that watches movies and TV shows using headphones or games using audiophile level headphones and all of that too. And you know, I think by and large, they created a very good product for that. So let's start on, though, music listening, more of a mixed bag, okay? So let's start getting into all of that by first talking about test gear. So like this is going to be extensive, okay? So bear with me on this because I checked this in a lot of different scenarios. When I first got it, I put it into my home theater system, which is, I will admit, is older now. It is very long in the tooth, but it still sounds great. So an old Denon AVR 2313 CI receiver. Yes, that's going all the way back to like a 2012 model, something like that. 2012, 2013, somewhere around in there. Okay, is like the audio source there. I would stream from video streaming services like Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, etc. Using a Roku Ultra box. My television is an old 2012 model 60-inch Panasonic plasma TV, which I still love, but it does have HDMI ARC on it. So I connected HDMI ARC into this unit. Now, I did not want to string like a 15-foot headphone cable along from my equipment rack to across the room to where my couch is, which isn't 15 feet in length, but I'm just saying 15 feet, so it would have some slack in it, all that. So what I ended up doing is I got an optical HDMI cable, and I can link in the description to where I got one from Amazon down below. And I strung that from the back side of my television and my theater equipment rack along the wall, along the side, and then there's a fireplace in my theater room that is, which is just the family room. And it has a nice deep mantle on it, and so I could set this up on that mantle, and that was only about like 5-ish feet from my primary seating position, direct line, and so I got about a 10-foot headphone cable, so I could comfortably stretch that and move around a little bit. Right there from there. Now, the headphone that I used in that setting was the HiFiMan HE1000 Stealth Magnet Edition, or which otherwise known as the HE1000 SE V3. It's the $1,400 unit right now. I chose that one for movie and TV watching because that model, just for whatever reason, its mid-range tonality to me is the least boxy, shouty, honky, hollow for spoken word dialogue. Right, so I started with the headphone that I thought I would need to fix the least in that use case, and honestly, it worked pretty well for that. I didn't really EQ it at all from there because that one worked pretty well just in its normal tuning for me, so that's what I used in the home theater setting. So let me go ahead and comment on the sound of that here really quick. And for movie and TV watching, this thing is actually really great. There's a lot of clarity to it. There is a lot of, like, the sound stage is nice and big and enveloping. The imaging and the separation are very good. There's nice lateral coherence to it. There's some good depth to it and all of that. So while it's not a full-on surround sound presentation, it still like kind of creates somewhat of an illusion of nice three-dimensionality and of being enveloped by the sound of whatever it is that you're watching. Okay, the dialogue is nice and clear. With those HE1000 Stealth headphones, I did not notice any problem with boxiness or shoutiness in the dialogue. Other headphones, yes, but not on that one, so I don't think it's the unit itself that was doing that, or the Fiio that was doing that. I think that's just my ears and how they interact with headphones. Okay, so And then the other thing that really stood out there was just like there was lots of really deep, well-extended, rumbly bass. Like there's plenty of power coming from this THX amp here. So like if a freight train rolls through in the movie, it rolls through your headphones. There's just lots of rumble in there, almost to the point of it being tactile. So it does a really good job with low frequency effects and all of that, which just also helps draw into the experience. So as like a desktop theater or home, integrating headphones into a home theater kind of piece, I can really strongly recommend this because it has a great feature set. If you have issues with too bright of soundtracks, which can happen sometimes, you've got like equalization options in there that you can get dialed in and that sort of thing. Okay, and it's got good imaging, separation, and clarity to the sound, so everything sounds pretty good. And like, I am not as picky about raw sound quality when I'm watching a show or a movie as I am when I'm listening to music. But even so, I thought this did a really rock solid job in that application. So if you are picking this up for knowing you're going to do a heavy amount of movie or TV watching or gaming, I think you make it a good choice with this unit for that use case. Now let's talk about music, because that's where things get a little bit more interesting. Okay. Test gear for music then. When I removed it from my home theater system, I took this to a couple of different places and used a couple of different applications with it. Just because it's one single all-in-one unit, I took it out to my sunroom where I used my iPad as a source, as a Roon endpoint, and then connected that via USB. It's a 10th gen iPad that has a USB-C port on it, so a USB-C cable, an AudioQuest USB-C cable to USB-C into the USB-C input on the Fiio, again using Roon. A few different headphones there, mostly closebacks because the sunroom, windows are open, can get windy, Focal Radiance, and the Sennheiser HD620S, which I'm working on a review for, would have been the ones I primarily used there. Bringing this unit down here into my basement where I did some more critical evaluation, that's where I brought out the big guns. HiFiMan Susvara, HiFiMan HE1000 SE. I also checked the Focal Utopia. I brought out my Audeze LCD2 pre-phaser, old unit here, but brought that out to try on here. Mastrop plus Sennheiser HD6XX, Beyerdynamic DT880. That should be enough to convince you I covered a wide range of type of headphone on there, and I have some comments about headphone pairings, which I will make here shortly. All right, so the sound on all of that. I should say that when it was down here, I would have plugged it in two ways, either direct USB from a Sonor Ultra Rendu streamer, or the Ultra Rendu would have gone through my Singer SU6 and then a coaxial connection from the SU6 into the K19. Using Roon as a source for all lossless or high-res FLAC files, either locally or streamed from Qobuz, or local DSD files, again, all through Roon. All right. What did I notice for the sound musically? And again, this is where things got mixed. The DAC seems pretty good. Like the DAC is like right in line with like a mid-fi, call it $400, $500, $600 DAC. Like from a technical standpoint, it seems like the DAC portion is basically even with something like an SMSL DO300, a Chord Mojo, like right in that range of those like middle of the $1,000 price tier there for a DAC. And there, good clarity, good detail, good resolution, good spatial holography and that sort of thing on it. So no complaints about the DAC. It's nice and smooth. It's not well tonally balanced and that sort of thing. The letdown for me and where things got dicey was the THX amp. Now, the AAA in these THX AAA amps, I believe, stands for Achromatic Audio Amplifier. And I have always taken issue with that achromatic claim. For those of you who may not be familiar with the English language as much, chromatic means like as pertaining to color, right? And then so achromatic means not colored. So THX has long claimed that their AAA amps like do not color the sound, and I just vehemently disagree with that claim. to my ear, they have often been a little bit bright, analytical, and they have like this crystalline or etched or digital kind of sounding nature and presentation to them. This unit is not the worst offender that I've heard among THX amps in that way, but it still definitely has elements of those traits in it, and they are coming from the amp, because I used just the DAC output as a preamp to like go into my Lake People G111 headphone amp. Didn't hear those qualities at all. It was only when I used the amplifier in here that I noticed such things. So what the amp does is it really enhances the clarity, and it kind of puts like an edge on all of the little sounds, and it just like emphasizes where things are in the sound field and all of that, which I think is of benefit for the movie and TV watching that I mentioned earlier, and for gaming, because it really helps with the localization of things there, but it sounds very artificial and just too enhanced and like overly crystalline, okay, when it comes to music listening. The detail retrieval of the amp is good, like the resolution is good, but like it's got that just that bright and analytic and just kind of harsh character to it and like tone to it. So it also just ends up sounding a little bit thin and brittle kind of in its presentation there with some headphones. And so this is where I'm going to talk about the mixed bag here a little bit, because like all is not lost. I did notice that higher impedance and relaxed presentation headphones tended to sound pretty good on this. If you have a headphone that is a detail retrieval monster or is generally lower in impedance, then things are like that glare that I talked about there, that harshness, that crystalline nature that just sounds like thin and unnatural and brittle to me comes through more. All right. Focal radiance, low impedance dynamic driver, I did not like on this this unit. It was just too much bite, around 2 to 3 kilohertz, where it just, again, it gave it that kind of crystalline, harsh, digitally etched, and you know, there's those qualities that I've been talking about definitely came out with the radiance, which surprised me a little bit, because the radiance is usually very amplifier, it's very chill with a lot of amplifiers, okay? So that happened here. Focal Utopia, even more so than the radiance, not really a good match for this. Hi-Fi Man Susvara, usually a very sweet sounding headphone, like super resolving. One of the most high resolving headphones on the planet. And I'm talking about OG Susvara here, not the new one, because I haven't heard the new one yet. But the OG Susvara is usually very sweet and laid back. It will tell you there's a problem with your signal chain, but it'll just do it in a nice way. Not so much on here. It got very, to my ear, there was just a lot of glare again, and harshness and brittleness through that 2 to 3 kilohertz range in particular that I didn't like, so I didn't think that was a good match. Hi-Fi Man HE1000 SE was a little bit better. I was a bit surprised that that one was smoother than Susvara on here, but it was still noticeable and got a little bit fatiguing for me after some listening there. So those are some of my favorites out there that I just didn't love for music listening on here. Now, some good ones. The Mastrops plus Sennheiser HD6XX, 300 ohm, sounded pretty good on here. The Sennheiser HD620S, the new closed back of the 600 line, sounded pretty good on here. And so that got me thinking slightly higher in impedance and a little bit more laid back kind of presentation might be what the THX amp in here needs. And I think that's what worked for those Sennheisers pretty well. So I got to thinking, what else do I have around? And I remember that I have that old Odyssey LCD2 pre-phaser around. It's an old unit, but 80 ohms of impedance, I think. Very kind of relaxed, laid back kind of presentation, and that also sounded very good on here. So that's kind of why I say that I think higher impedances and again just more relaxed presentations are where you want to be with this unit, because that THX amp is just going to pump up all of the contrasts in your sound, right, in the signal to an unnatural degree to me. But if you pull it back from the headphone end, then like you just get a little bit more detail forward kind of presentation from those more relaxed headphones, which can be a good match at times for music listening and all that. The Beyer DT880, the 600 ohm edition, surprised me a little bit. That one was still very sharp and sibilant with a lot of vocals, which is one of the things that headphone struggles with when it's on the wrong signal chain for it, period. But if you're listening to just instrumental music on that headphone here, then it was a pretty good match to this one and all of that. Okay, now, here's the thing, that harshness and that glare of that THX sound that I mentioned is always here on this unit, regardless of headphone that you use. Okay, and this is before we get into any EQ. I should mention that too, before we get into any EQ. It's just always there, and I could really hear it when I would like switch back and forth from this unit to another signal chain, which I'll talk about here in a little bit, but it's always there. It's just that some headphones take to it better, and like because of their more relaxed presentation, they're okay with it, and I ended up really enjoying the sound and like genuinely enjoying listening to music through this as well on those headphones. But then there are a lot of others where it just does not work very well. It gets very grating and fatiguing to my ear very quickly, unfortunately. All right, okay. Even though it's got plenty of power, again, like it handles Susvara really well from a power standpoint, like that's not the issue. It's just the way that it does it creates a problem for me. All right, let's do some comparisons for music listening without EQ, and then we'll get into some other stuff and talk about the EQ. All right. To do the DAC comparison, I got out the SMSL DO300, as I mentioned, and routed both of those, like the DAC output of this, and then of course the DO300 through my Lake People G111 Mark II head amp. And I would say that basically the DAC in here is like right on par with what you get from the SMSL DO300 DAC. And I like that DAC, so that's good. Very neutral sound and all that, very even in terms of detail retrieval, resolution, spatial holography, and all that kind of thing. So that was good there. Now, I thought that like when you get the headphone pairing right, okay, in other words, for this one, like HD6XX or the HD620S, okay, or that LCD2 in particular, when you get those right, the stack of the DO300 plus the G111 Mark II and then this unit, okay, all on, as an all-in-one, they're about dead even in terms of their technical ability, but the presentations are different. You still hear, even on the Sennheisers, even on the Odyssey, you still hear a bit of that THX harshness come through here. Now, it's not a problem for me with those headphones. It may be for you, but it's not for me. But you definitely hear it. Outside of that, though, again, like the technical ability of this one in terms of, again, the resolution, the detail retrieval, the spatial holography, all of those kinds of things is like right there with the DO300 plus G111 Mark II stack. They are virtually dead even on those things. Okay, so I do think that as a DAC amp, when you throw in the EQ here, like you could be looking at a pretty solid value for the K19. So let's go ahead and then use that to transition to talking about the equalization. All right, so you get a 31 band parametric EQ in here among other things. And the way you access, I already talked about how you access it through the RS-232 port, and then you use the web, or not a web interface, but you use a desktop computer or laptop computer interface to actually set the EQ and all of that. I was able to EQ out some of that glary harshness, particularly in the 2 to 3 kilohertz range from the Focal Radiance. That's one I did as like a proof of concept to see if it could be done. And it could. At least on that headphone, for the most part, I was able to scale back some of that, just that glary digital etchiness there. And it was like with a 2 dB cut at 3.17 kilohertz and 4 kilohertz. I was able to drop that down in there. I'm pretty sure that's where I was. I may have said 2 kilohertz earlier, but it's like about 3 and 4. Pull those back. There was still some sibilance with vocals there, but they were less sharp and less piercing. And again, overall, that fatiguing glare and etchedness, crystallineness, abated some, and it became a much more enjoyable listening experience with the focal radiance at that point. So I think in theory you can EQ out the digital harshness on this one with most headphones. However, you will be changing the shape of the frequency response you get from that headphone to do so. So if you like the way a headphone sounds without any EQ, and then you need to take out that digital glariness that the amp in here offers, like, you're going to change the sound of that headphone, and that's something that you need to keep in mind. However, if you are a person who is just endlessly tweaking the sound and trying to get dialed in with the equalization and all of that, like, I did find the EQ on this to be rather intuitive to use for the most part. A couple of little quirks here that'll take you a couple button clicks to figure out, but not long. Okay, and I will link to some instructions on how to use it down in the description below. But there's a lot of power in the equalization here. Just a lot of options, a lot of flexibility. You can change the frequency with which the sliders work, and then you have quite a bit of range on the sliders in terms of how much, like, either attenuation or boost you want at every frequency. So there is just a lot of ability in there. And it does produce some productive sonic results if you want. So it is definitely there. It is powerful. I may, if I get to keep this unit, I may end up tweaking the mids for the HE1000 Stealth for movie watching, because I think that's where this will land for me. Just to make sure that, like, the dialogue just becomes as natural as possible to my ears, so that it's just a little bit less distracting. But, like, that's how I would use the EQ on this as well. But again, it is almost endlessly powerful and a big option there, and it does make a difference sonically in the right circumstances. All right, so let's talk about the value of this thing then, because as I've said on this channel before, like, when I review an all-in-one, like a DAC, an amp, plus a streamer or an EQ, like whatever the list of functions are. In this case, you get a DAC, a preamp, a headphone amp, and an equalizer in here. I start thinking to myself, can I assemble a unit that has, or can I assemble a separate stack for basically the same price as the all-in-one that gives me equal or better audio performance and roughly the same feature set and features options as the all-in-one unit is offering? If I can, the all-in-one unit is too expensive and the price needs to be lowered. So this unit, DAC, preamp, headphone amp, very extensive equalizer, 4 big functions, and then of course you've got, like, it's easier to integrate this unit into a home theater system, okay, or use it as a desktop theater piece than most other units out there right now. Can I do that for $1,300 otherwise? Like, for just pure sound, just the combo, and for music listening, I should say, the combo of the SMSL DO300 DAC and the Lake People G111 Mark II amp is right there with this unit technically, and I think a little bit more smooth and natural sounding to my ear. But it has no EQ options, basically. None, okay? So those two together with list prices are going to be pretty close to $1,000, and, like, then the best you could do is like a shit Lokius. 6-band equalizer in between those two units. And that's not going to give you anywhere near the level of equalization functionality that this has, and then it also doesn't have HDMI ARC or an HDMI pass-through or anything of that nature. And I'm trying to think what else might be out there that you could do this. Like, maybe the RME ADI2 with the same Lake People G111 Mark II amp. Now, I have not heard that RME. I know it has extensive equalization on it too, but I don't know what its quality is like as a DAC. But that could be fine. But I don't think it has HDMI ARC on it, and definitely doesn't have HDMI pass-through. So, long story short, no, I don't think for $1,300 you can assemble a separate stack that gives you roughly this performance. You can get the performance, but you can't get all of the features, okay, for this price here. So I think even with that THX amp glariness to it, that crystalline etchedness to it, this is still a good buy because there are headphones that, at least to these ears, were okay with that sound. And I think that that sound actually does work really well for movie watching, TV watching, and gaming, right? Those kinds of things. Didn't bother me at all there. It was really just with music listening, and again, with the right headphones, that ended up not being a big deal for me. So I think for the right people and in the right use case, this is definitely a high value product, and for that I can give it, a limited recommendation for those people who are going to be using it for a lot of like desktop theater or home theater integration kind of stuff, and are willing to find a headphone that it will match well to if you're going to use it for music. All right, so I'm Wave Theory. This has been my review of the Fiio K19 DAC preamp, head amp, and equalizer. Thanks to Fiio for sending this over for review. Thanks to all of you for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Generally do those things you do to support YouTube channels. And as always, enjoy the music.